Welcome to the Blessors of Israel Podcast. I'm Matthew Dodd, Executive Director of Blessors of Israel. Once again, honored to be in studio with Pastor Rich Jones, the founder and chairman of Blessors of Israel. Well, Pastor Rich, on Friday, I was at a youth retreat. And after the evening session, around 11 o'clock, my phone started blowing up with text messages from people who are partners with Blessors of Israel.
Right.
And they're saying, hey, did you see what's going on? Israel was... In the United States, they've struck Iran, so I was up to 1 o'clock just trying to, just digest all the information that was coming and what's true, what's false, trying to understand all of this because, we've talked about this. There's been the rattling of sabers, right? There's been moving of assets into the Middle East. There have been negotiations that have been going on between the United States and Iran. And all of a sudden now, in the midst of those negotiations, there's a strike. And I guess one of the first questions I have for you from your perspective is this. Do you feel like this strike against Iran was justified? What are your thoughts?
Well, let's go back to a couple of things. First, when the uprisings within Iran took place, President Trump very clearly said that there would be action if these were attacked. And actually we made note back in those days that we don't see any real substance to that comment, but certainly now there's clear substance to it. But I think really it's a bigger picture than that. I think we have to look what is the core issue, and the core issue is we cannot allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. That is the bottom line. We already know that they would use it if they had it. And when the United States and Israel attacked Iran in the, let's call it the 12-day military operation that really took down their capability of creating a nuclear weapon, really reduced it quite significantly. They rebuilt that right away.
They did.
They immediately rebuilt that.
And they just struck a location next to Tehran, which was a secret nuclear facility that they were developing.
Now, in these negotiations leading up to this war, let's call it that, when our diplomats sat down with theirs, their opening salvo was, we reserve the right to create nuclear weapons.
And
they were not hiding it.
Well, not only that, but Steve Witkoff came out, it was reported today, saying one of the first things they also said to him and to Jared Kushner, directly was, we have enough to enrich to 11 nuclear weapons.
Exactly.
So they were, both negotiators were boasting about that. And they look at each other, Kushner and Witkoff, saying, this is real. Here we go.
This is real. And they're making, there's no attempt here, to put a face on it. They're just coming out boldly and saying, we have the right. And this is their opening salvo, right? We have the right, and we fully plan to do it. Now, I think what they meant, what they thought, is that would cause the United States to, back down. That is not what you do. Particularly with this administration.
Exactly right.
And so, no, will they take 11? If they have 11, would they use them? There's no one in their right mind that would think otherwise. They absolutely would.
The truth of the matter is, we've been at war, whether we recognize it or not, with Iran for 47 years?
Yeah, since the revolution.
Exactly right. So it is interesting that finally we have an administration that is actually listening to what the enemy is saying. Because I think for the longest time we've just played patty cake. We just appease, and just kind of push it down the road. Okay, no, they really won't act upon this. And I think to a fault we've done that. And
to a great fault.
To a great fault. And to a position of vulnerability. And President Trump has said, not on my watch. This is not going to happen. You're not going to acquire nuclear weapons on my watch.
Well, and again, I think previously they had put at least the look and the appearance of deception. Here, they're not even trying.
Exactly right.
No, we will, and we have the right to.
We have the right to.
Inalienable right to do that, and we can make 11, and everybody knows that they meant to use it, right? So, it's a very important question, right? is this an America first question? It's in it. Number one, yes, it is, because if they bring that to bear and they use those nuclear weapons, number one, they would use it on our number one ally in the region, which is Israel, and there would be world war.
Absolutely.
As a result of that.
Absolutely.
So therefore, it is in our best interest to stop them from having a nuclear weapon. Now, how successful this will be, how long this will take, all of that is still an open question. But should they have gone in and done what they did to reduce the possibility, I think this is the opportunity they had, and they took it.
And I agree. And based on more information that's coming out from Trump, from Netanyahu, from Rubio, there was an imminent threat that they were saying we were within months away, and frankly,
months? I think it's weeks.
Well,
or even days.
Netanyahu was making it sound like we had some time here, but not much. And once that happens, all bets are off at that point.
That's right.
All bets are off at that point.
Because actually, what's interesting in this war going on now, Iran has been able to penetrate through the shield. Now, the vast majority of their missiles and drones, etc., have been taken out, but they have had enough that have broken through that there has been some significant damage and loss of life.
Agreed.
And the United States themselves now have suffered loss of life.
We have.
So, can they therefore penetrate through with a nuclear weapon if they had one developed? I think the evidence now is yes, they could. Could it be stopped? Perhaps. But is it possible that it could go through? Yes, it could. And therefore, it's an imminent threat.
Exactly. Now, one of the interesting twists in all of this is how Iran went after the Arab neighbors. Not just Israel, but the Arab neighbors. I wanted to get your take on that, because that has really thrown a monkey wrench. Now, I'm not saying the Trump administration didn't anticipate this, but it is an interesting twist that has thrown, I think, the Middle East, into an uproar. And then you have the timing of it, Ramadan. You have something unprecedented I've never seen. Perhaps you have. The State Department coming out saying, if you are in these 12 countries, including Israel, U.S. citizens, get out. Take any means. And now they're taking, I think they're trying to get about 500 evacuated as quickly as possible.
12 nations are under that warning alert. This is a very, very interesting recalibration, which is really what it is. Because, before this, I mean, I think everybody saw the buildup. The naval buildup particularly was a very clear and obvious sign that America meant it. And so the Arab nations were kind of, let's say, maybe, I want to be careful, maybe two-handed in it. I think they were saying on the, public side, don't, but privately do. And then I think everybody expected that Iran would attack U.S. bases, which are, of course, located in many of these Arab nations. Nobody thought that they would actually attack the country and the
capital, like Iraq.
We're talking about civilians,
exactly.
Right? Hotels, airports.
Yeah.
These are not military targets. These are not U.S. bases. And when they took that step, that was a line. That they crossed a red line. Now, how did that happen? I think that some are suggesting that the Ayatollah, before his demise, had put forth an order that essentially pushed the authority down the rail, so that each of the various different authorities can make their own decisions. And I think they're making some very terrible decisions. There's no central command. This is part of the problem right now. There's no central command. But nevertheless, they are attacking Arab nations, and those Arab nations are now ready to...
Yeah, they're asking, can we get in and do it on our own? We don't want to wait. They're asking Trump for authorization, but they're asking we want to defend ourselves on our own.
No one expected that.
And they're a little upset because they feel like some of the protection is going to Israel, and these guys still feel vulnerable. So there is a little bit of back and forth with regards to that too.
Well, but we do have bases.
We do.
In these nations, right? And we don't have a base in Israel. So I think we can counter that. But this is an unexpected turn. And I think it changes completely the metric, completely recalibrates.
So from an economic standpoint, what are they trying to do?
Which one?
Iran. By attacking these neighbors, what does that do economically, globally speaking?
Well, of course, the immediate impact is going to be the supply of oil, and the price of oil is going to go up.
And it has
already
today.
has. And of course, the world economy cannot take a long, sustained hit on that.
Qatar's pulling back on LNG supply, aluminum manufacturing. So you're seeing a ripple effect already.
Absolutely.
The markets are reacting. I'm surprised that oil hasn't risen higher. As of my last look was around $76 per barrel, but nevertheless, it did take a jump.
Now, what's interesting, however, in that when this is resolved, we are going to see a rebound on the world economy like we have not seen in many, many years.
Explain what you mean by that. Why?
Well, number one, because it settles many of the conflicts that have really disrupted trade. The threat on the Strait of Hormuz has been there for now a number of years. The Houthis, as well as Iran themselves, threatening this, and not to settle this down, presumably that it would cause Iran to no longer be funding their proxies. This would create such a stability, and of course bring the oil prices way down considerably, because a stabilized Iran, we presume that's going to be the result of this, is going to be bringing forth oil supply, to rebuild their nation. Again, we are going to presume out of this will be something.
But built within your statement there is the idea that there's going to be a regime change.
Not necessarily. There might be, and that likely could be. We cannot project that.
We don't know that. We do know that the Ayatollah's son, it does look like he was elected today, even though there was a lot of fire coming down on the building where the voters or the people who were tabulating the votes were meeting.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it does appear that the son, and he is cut from the same cloth as his father, just as extreme. There was a lot of pressure by the IRGC to get someone put into place. And he, it looks like it, based on my readings, was one of those players behind the scenes. They kind of kept him concealed. And he's been one of those power brokers behind the scenes, and also was connected to the IRGC, played some influence there. We're going to see how this goes. But now he's got a target on his head.
Absolutely.
Clearly.
Yes. Now, again, regime change, is that possible?
Well, that's what I want to find out. I want to ask you, because from my perspective, I really struggle with this idea that there's a possibility for regime change. First and foremost, this is not the United States. They don't have a Second Amendment. And so their ability to take up arms as a population and turn over the government, all we have to do is look back just a few weeks ago with the riots, the protests that they had there. And we're talking 35,000 over maybe up to 38,000 that were massacred by the Iranian regime. The son's going to try to do the exact same thing to keep that grip over the Iranian people.
Absolutely. And then you look at the size of the IRGC, you look at the size of the Army, Special Forces. These are massive armies. This is very large. So unless you have
someone from within those ranks who's able to pivot a group within those ranks, it's hard to see a regime change taking place.
Well, but what is the likelihood of that happening? If someone stood forth and proclaimed, I am the guy that's going to turn this thing around, he would be assassinated.
He's gone.
Frankly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's be realistic.
And perhaps that's why Trump said today that he'd be willing to talk to somebody in this new regime who even has links to the current group.
Who's maybe a little more moderate and have a little more sense of diplomacy. But let's be realistic. That likelihood is not high, right? So what are the likely outcomes? I think myself, my opinion is that they will be decimated down to a fraction of the strength. They will have limited capacity to even control their own population, let alone start to try to, control their proxies.
Yeah.
They will be struggling just to maintain semblance of order, and so can we see a regime change? I really don't think so. I think that we're going to be looking at maybe a new form of their government, but it will be much the same. And I think that we're just going to have to negotiate with a new order that is a fraction of what it was. And that's really, I think, the best that's going to be achieved, is that they're not going to be able to rebuild this thing for many, many years.
So based on what you're saying then, we are going to have more of the same with this new regime, it looks like, but what they're able to do is going to be pushed down the road, delayed until they can rebuild, until they can strengthen. Because with that ideology, they're not going to give up and just be passive from this point on.
That's right.
They're going to rebuild. I think you're going to have something similar to what you had with Hamas. Mm-hmm. Hey, we're going to make it look like everything's fine. We're going to make it look like everything is peaceful, while they're going to strengthen the nets so that they can attack. And I think we've talked about this before, Ezekiel 38. One of the verses that has troubled scholars down through the years is Ezekiel 38. You have verse 8, and then a little bit later you also have, I believe it's verse 10. It talks about Israel without walls, dwelling securely.
Right.
And I've read interpretation after interpretation where they try to do gymnastics with that verse to say, well, that could happen, that might be true now. This situation here, if it does play out the way we're talking, means that Iran is declawed and defanged for a season, but it's an opportunity for them to rebuild. They'll be quiet and they'll be peaceful. They'll play patty cake. They'll play nice. But they're going to be building and building and building. And during that time, there's going to be, I believe, a strengthening of the Abraham Accords. We've talked about that.
That's right.
So you're going to have these Arab nations around because now Iran's no longer the threat that it used to be. So these nations are going to be stronger and stronger, and it's going to bring Israel to a place where they feel secure. And perhaps even to a place where they feel like we can let our guard down. So we're not talking about something right now. They'll be secure, but you see what I'm saying here?
Oh, absolutely. And this is exactly right.
And that is my concern is, when you get prideful, when you feel like everything is secure, everything is fine, that's one of the most dangerous places to be, not just as a country, but spiritually speaking too. We let our guard down. And it looks like that could be the place that would set the stage for the fulfillment of the battle of Gog and Magog.
And interestingly, this current war plays into it because when Iran attacked those Arab nations, and those Arab nations aligned with Israel and the United States, who would have thought of that? It's going to create, as you just mentioned, a resurgence of the Abrahamic Accords. These are the accords between certain Arab nations and Israel. Now it will be expanded. I think Saudi Arabia will very likely lead in that, and we will see a time of peace, which is Ezekiel.
But by the way, they're also mentioned in Ezekiel 38. When Israel is surrounded, outmanned, and outgunned, they're saying, hey, why are you doing such a thing? But they really don't intervene at all.
Right.
They just say, hey,
they stand back and
you
watch.
guys are out of line. And they
But let's bring up a couple of other factors. One is China and one's Russia.
I was glad you brought that up because I was going to do so next.
Well, because Russia, as we know from Ezekiel 38, is mentioned, of course, as is behind a lot of the...
They're the driving force.
They're the driving force. But they themselves have been weakened. And by the way, this war with Iran is going to weaken Russia further because Iran has been the major supplier of military drones to Russia to attack Ukraine. And so that's going to affect that war. But interestingly, this whole battle with Ukraine and the United States and Europe really standing against Russia has brought them to a low point, and yet we see in Ezekiel 38 that they're strong.
Exactly.
So we see a time period of building toward Ezekiel 38. Iran is reduced, although they will play a part in this as well. They will be rebuilt. Russia, this will settle. They will be rebuilt. The Arab nations will find themselves in an Abrahamic accord with Israel.
Yeah.
But then when the whole thing comes to bear, they will take a stance of neutrality. China, of course, is an interesting factor here. And I find China's comments about this whole Iran war very interesting also, because they're kind of like slap on hands.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you guys just stop it.
Yeah.
That's basically what they told Israel today.
Right.
Just stop. Play nice.
But there's no real teeth or strength
None at all.
behind that. And
by the way, Xi's not in a strong place right now either in China.
That's right.
And there is a great concern about that. Trump is supposed to go meet him. I'm wondering if all bets are off with regards to that visit.
That would be an interesting one. And by the way, everybody's recalibrating. I think the nations of the world are recalibrating. They saw what the United States did with Venezuela. Mm-hmm. They saw what the United States and Israel is doing with Iran. And I think there's a recalibration. Like this administration means it.
But you have this BRIC alliance of nations and the BRICS. And,
right.
the Brazil, Russia, India, Iran's part of it, China, South Africa. Yeah. Interesting to see how, they had this alliance on paper, but when push comes to shove, what were all these agreements? What did they really mean when Iran needed their help?
Right.
And there's nothing that's happened at all.
And by the way, I know we're kind of getting off field here a little bit, bringing up BRICS and the dollar, mm-hmm. right? But anybody who does business with the United States finds themselves in a quandary, in the sense that United States deals in dollars, and they are still the predominant player in the world.
By the way, dollar just got stronger because of this. It didn't get weaker; it got stronger.
Exactly right.
Which actually dropped gold down.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't notice that one.
Dropped it down about 200 points.
But these nations, China is a good example. When they buy massive amounts sell massive amounts of goods into America, they get dollars. What do they do with those dollars? Well, they'll buy treasury bills.
Yep.
And so this is going to just continue. This is not going to end anytime soon, right? So the demand for treasury bills, which is strengthening the dollar also, is high. Anyway, we're getting off a little bit.
Yeah, but Trump also says this is not going to be a forever war. He planned it was only going to be 4 to 5 weeks in length. And when you look at the impact of Iran's strikes on the oil and whatnot, and what that may do to our economy here back at home, though he says he's going to make sure that we can keep things in alignment so that the oil doesn't get too expensive, and as a result, we have prices that skyrocket here at home. Because with an midterm election coming down the pike,
that's right.
The economy is one of the most important factors, and if we're not kicking on all cylinders with the economy, we're going to lose bad. The GOP is going to lose bad in the midterms, and if that happens, then Trump is going to be impeached. Whether he's going to get convicted or not, that remains to be seen in terms of who's in the Senate, who's running the Senate. But very interesting dynamics. There's so many variables that are at play right now. But I think, biblically speaking, the thing that is most interesting to me is how this is going to set the field for the Battle of Gog and Magog. How you're going to have, I think you said, peace for a season, which is going to give Iran and the likes of Russia a chance to rebuild, as well, to get strengthened.
Abrahamic Accords.
Absolutely.
The world economy will strengthen.
Yes.
As part of all of this, right? It will cause many boats to rise, as we can say economically, but it will be a time of rebuilding, setting the stage for Ezekiel 38. And that's a fascinating...
And what would be interesting is if the rapture did happen before the Battle of Gog and Magog, then you could see how that would have an impact on the world because of, a strong Christian base here in the United States. That would be an interesting dynamic in the West and also in the United States that may, some have postulated, create that door or opening for Russia. But we can't remember, by the way, we've got to remember Turkey too.
That's right.
They're playing it nice right now. But they're also looking to take advantage of this too.
They're a player in all of this as well. I think, at a future podcast, I want to talk about comparing Ezekiel 38, this battle that we're referring to, and the Battle of Armageddon, and also the Antichrist.
Agreed.
And the covenant of peace that the Antichrist makes with the world, and when all hell breaks loose during the middle of the tribulation. I think we should
Yeah.
discuss
We've done it before with a previous prophecy update.
that was some time ago.
But that was some time ago. I think it'd be good for us to revisit.
Particularly in light of what's happening now in the world with the Abrahamic Accords with Iran, Russia, China, Turkey, and weakened Europe, by the way. I think all of that plays into Scripture.
Isn't it interesting, though? Who would have thought after October 7th, 2023,
all of this.
Hamas, where it's at, Hezbollah,
Right.
Iran.
Right.
Who would have thought?
Right. Houthis. I mean, on and on. Syria. That's another one.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? And now, I mean, I don't think anybody thought that Iran would be directly attacked and really reduced in strength in days. It's only been, 3-4 days.
That's right.
And they have been reduced in strength by 50%,
at least
60%, maybe more.
Yeah.
And of course, what Israel and the United States are doing primarily is attacking their ability to create war, offense, right? They're attacking missile sites.
They're dismantling it.
They're dismantling their military.
Well, this is such a fluid situation. I mean, every day the news headlines are changing.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to do here at Blessors. We want you to be the best informed. And so we want to make sure you visit our website at www.blessors.org. That's blessors with an ors.org. We're putting out curated news from all the various news sources concerning Israel and the Middle East. We want you to be the best informed. And so make sure you check out our newsroom there. You can also learn about our vision and our mission statement as an organization. We really feel called of God for such a time as this to make sure the Christian church is well informed, knows how to stand and pray for Israel in the latter days. By the way, you'll also see original articles there from a biblical perspective. If you haven't done so already, make sure you like this podcast, subscribe to the channel, whatever channel you're watching, and make sure you share our podcast with your friends, the people you go to church with, your neighbors, so that they too can be informed about Israel and how to stand with Israel in the latter days. You can follow us on Facebook, X, and Getter, and we appreciate your prayers and your financial support as we build this new and important ministry. Remember, those who bless Israel will be blessed. Shalom, shalom.